Dust swirled through the broken city, carried by the dry wind that whistled between towers long turned to stone and ash. The ruins stretched for miles, each building carved with strange symbols no human could read, each corner heavy with silence that felt older than time itself. The exploration team moved carefully, boots crunching on shattered stone, their scanners glowing faintly as they searched for energy traces. This world had been abandoned for 1,000 years, or so the records claimed, but something about the ruins felt wrong, as if the city was not dead but holding its breath. The leader of the group, Captain Hayes, motioned for the others to stop as a sound echoed faintly through the rubble. It was not the groan of shifting stone or the howl of wind. It was higher, softer, almost like a cry. The team froze, their hands tightening on their weapons. No life signs had shown on their scanners, and yet the sound came again, fragile and trembling, like the whimper of something small and frightened. They followed it, their flashlights sweeping across broken statues and half-buried streets, until they reached a collapsed archway. Beneath the fallen stones, something shifted, a faint glow shining through the cracks. Hayes and 2 others dropped to their knees, pulling at the rocks, ignoring the dust cutting into their skin. The glow grew brighter, and the sound became clear. It was the cry of a living creature. With one last push, the stones rolled aside, and the team gasped at what they found. Curled in the hollow, its tiny wings pressed against its sides, lay a creature that none of them had ever seen except in ancient myths. Scales shimmered across its body, not in dull color but in rippling light, as if the stars themselves had been caught in its skin. 2 golden eyes blinked up at them, wide and full of fear. It gave another small cry, its chest rising and falling quickly as it trembled in the rubble. "It's a baby," one soldier whispered, unable to believe what he saw. "A baby dragon." The word hung in the air like forbidden fire, for dragons were creatures of legend, stories told in hushed voices by sailors and wanderers across the stars. Hayes stared down at it, his throat dry. The little creature was no myth. It was real. And it was helpless. He reached out slowly, his gloved hand brushing against the cracked stone near its body. The dragon flinched, but when Hayes whispered softly, his voice calm, it stopped trembling. Its glowing scales flickered faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Easy, little one," Hayes murmured. "We won't hurt you." Together, the team lifted the creature free, brushing away the dust. It weighed little more than a child, its wings fragile as glass, its claws no sharper than needles. As Hayes cradled it, he felt its warmth through his armor, a heat that was not just from its body but something deeper, like holding a piece of a living sun. The others crowded around, awe and fear mingling in their eyes. They had come seeking artifacts, records, maybe old technology. None had expected to find life, let alone this. Before they could speak further, the ground beneath them shuddered. Stones tumbled from broken walls, and dust poured from the sky. A deep rumble rolled through the ruins, vibrating up from the earth itself. The baby dragon whimpered, burying its head against Hayes's chest, its glowing scales flashing brighter as though reacting to the sound. The team staggered, struggling to keep balance as the tremor passed, and then silence returned. But it was not the silence of emptiness. It was the silence of something listening. The ruins seemed to change around them, the ancient carvings on the walls faintly glowing as if some hidden system had awakened. The soldiers exchanged uneasy looks, their instincts telling them that something terrible had just been stirred. "Captain," one whispered, voice shaking. "I think we weren't the first to come here. I think someone left this creature here on purpose." Hayes glanced at the baby dragon, then at the glowing marks crawling faintly across the stones. A thought gripped his mind like ice. Perhaps the ruins were not ruins at all. Perhaps they were a prison. And the creature in his arms was the key. The baby dragon let out a soft, pitiful sound, and Hayes tightened his hold. "We can't leave it here," he said firmly, though his own voice wavered with unease. "Whatever this place is, it tried to bury it alive. That's not a fate it deserves." No one argued, though their faces were pale. They began to move back toward their transport, every step heavy with the feeling that unseen eyes were watching. The glowing symbols flickered faintly as they passed, spreading like veins across the ruins. The earth groaned again, low and distant, like something deep below had turned in its sleep. The team quickened their pace, their nerves stretched thin, yet the baby dragon in Hayes's arms calmed, its breathing slowing as it clung to him. It trusted them. And somehow, that trust felt heavier than the stones they had lifted. As they climbed the ridge overlooking the city, Hayes cast one last glance back. The ruins glowed faintly in the dark, patterns crawling outward in shapes too vast to be random. They pulsed like a heartbeat, and the sound that followed chilled him to the bone. It was faint, deep, and terrible, like the echo of a roar rising from beneath the ground. The captain's jaw tightened. They had reached for a baby dragon, but in doing so, they had woken something far worse. Something that had been waiting for this moment. And somewhere below, in the endless dark, the real danger opened its eyes. The storm passed in the night, but the unease it left behind clung to every shadow of the camp. The humans had set up a temporary shelter outside the ruined city, a circle of lights and machines that hummed in the darkness. Beyond their perimeter, the ancient towers leaned like broken teeth, glowing faintly with the strange marks that had begun to crawl across their surfaces. Nobody wanted to speak of it. They pretended to focus on reports and gear checks, but their eyes always drifted back to the creature resting near the fire. The baby dragon lay curled against a blanket, its small body rising and falling as it breathed, scales glowing softly like dying embers. Despite its fragile size, its presence filled the air with a weight none of them could describe. It was too much like holding a myth in their hands, too much like carrying a story that had never been meant for them. Captain Hayes sat nearby, his gaze fixed on the dragon. It had refused food and water, though not out of weakness. It acted as though it was waiting, as if the simple things of human life did not matter to it. Instead, its golden eyes never left the sky, watching the stars as though searching for something. When it stirred, it made no sound, but Hayes always felt the hum of warmth spread through his chest, as if it spoke without words. The calm did not last. Just before dawn, the earth rumbled again. The vibrations spread through the camp, rattling cups and shaking the portable lights. Several soldiers jumped up, weapons raised, their training driving fear into action. Hayes steadied them with a sharp gesture, but even he felt his stomach tighten. The tremor had been stronger than the last. Something below was moving, and it was moving closer. One of the engineers rushed to him with a scanner in hand, the screen glowing with chaotic lines. "Captain, you need to see this," he said, his voice sharp with alarm. Hayes glanced at the display, and for a moment, he could not believe it. Massive shapes registered deep beneath the surface, too large to be natural, too deliberate to be chance. They were shifting slowly, like sleeping giants turning in their beds. The signal came from under the ruined city. It came from where they had found the dragon. Hayes closed the scanner with a snap, his expression grim. "Keep this between us for now. We don't need panic." But inside, panic already gnawed at him. When the sun rose weakly over the ruins, they were greeted by a sight none had expected. Villagers. Dozens of them appeared along the ridge, wrapped in rough cloth and carrying long staffs carved with old runes. Their eyes were wide with fear, not curiosity. They had followed the humans, drawn by the shaking earth and the unnatural glow in the ruins. The eldest among them stepped forward, his voice hoarse but urgent as he pointed toward the dragon. "Return it," he said, his language rough but clear enough. "Put it back. Seal it again." The team stiffened, exchanging wary glances. Hayes stepped forward, keeping his hand close to his weapon though he did not draw it. "Seal what?" he asked. The old man shook his head violently, his staff tapping the ground. "You do not understand. That creature was not abandoned. It was buried. It must never leave this ground, or the sleepers below will rise. They will hear it. They will wake." The baby dragon raised its head at the man's words, its eyes glowing brighter. It let out a low, sharp sound, something between a cry and a growl, and the villagers immediately shrank back as though it had struck them. Hayes's grip tightened on his weapon. The thought came again, this city was not a graveyard. It was a lock, and the dragon was the key. He looked back at the small creature, now pressing against his boot as though seeking protection, and his heart twisted. The villagers wanted to leave it to die, to be entombed again in stone. But to abandon it like that was unthinkable. As the soldiers tried to calm the villagers, the dragon suddenly lifted its head to the sky. Its scales flickered, brighter and brighter, until the whole camp was bathed in gold. Then it released a piercing cry, louder than anything it had made before. The sound cut through the air, shaking the ground under their feet. The humans staggered, covering their ears, while the villagers fell to their knees in terror. The dragon's call echoed into the ruins, and then, As the sound faded, another came in answer. A deep, rumbling growl rose from far below, carried on the earth like thunder in stone. The villagers screamed, scattering back down the ridge, their staffs clattering to the rocks. The baby dragon collapsed, exhausted, its light dimming. Hayes knelt and scooped it into his arms, his mind racing. The villagers had been right about one thing. Something down there had heard. And it had answered. He looked to his team, their faces pale and stricken with fear. "We move now," he said, his voice cold and certain. "Pack everything. We're leaving." But even as he said it, the truth settled into his bones. The shaking was growing stronger. The ground beneath the ruined city was splitting. And no matter how far they ran, the danger that was waking below was coming for all of them. The night fell heavy over the ruins, but no one slept. The camp lights flickered as if the very air was trying to snuff them out, and the ground quivered now and then with unsettling tremors. Each soldier lay awake, their rifles within reach, listening to the steady hum of the scanners that tracked what moved below. The readings had grown worse. Shapes the size of mountains drifted in the darkness beneath the surface, no longer dormant but shifting restlessly like predators testing their cages. The baby dragon slept fitfully, wings twitching, its glow flaring and fading as if in rhythm with the earth. Captain Hayes sat by the fire, his face hard with worry. He had been a soldier long enough to know the sound of engines, and when the tremors came, he swore he could hear a faint mechanical thrum beneath them. Whatever stirred below was not alive in the way they knew life. It was something made, something meant for war. By dawn, the ground betrayed them. A thunderous crack tore through the city, one of the broken towers collapsing in a cloud of dust as the earth split open beneath it. The soldiers scrambled for cover, dragging equipment with them, shouting over the roar. Hayes clutched the baby dragon close as the tremors shook harder, scattering stones and snapping the ground into jagged fissures. Then came the light, brilliant streams of red fire bursting from the cracks, pouring like veins of molten metal. Strange symbols ignited across the ruins, the same markings that had flared to life the night they rescued the dragon. Only now they burned brighter, alive with purpose. The dragon shrieked, thrashing in Hayes's grip, its scales blazing white as it answered the call rising from below. The earth gave way. With a terrible groan, the ground beneath the humans split open entirely, swallowing tents, scanners, and lights into an abyss. Several soldiers lost their footing and tumbled, their cries vanishing into the depths. Hayes barked orders, struggling to keep the team together, but the ground betrayed them again, crumbling beneath their boots. With no choice, they leapt into the widening chasm, sliding down a slope of broken stone into the glowing dark. Dust and heat burned their lungs, but at last they landed hard upon solid ground, a cavern so massive it seemed impossible, a world beneath the world. The chamber stretched out like a cathedral of nightmares. Towering walls of black stone curved high into the shadows, glowing faintly with alien symbols. In the center, shapes loomed, giant forms lined in rows, their bodies a fusion of flesh and machine. They were beasts of war, their frames forged of metal and fire, each one larger than a building. Their eyes, dark and empty, were set into faces that looked more dragon than machine, yet hollow, soulless, and cruel. Hayes and his team stared in awe and terror. This was no cave. It was a hangar. And these were not statues. They were sleeping weapons. The baby dragon slipped from Hayes's arms, stumbling forward on trembling legs. It stared at the towering beasts as though recognizing them, its tiny frame shaking with both fear and defiance. The soldiers aimed their rifles at the machines instinctively, but Hayes knew their weapons would be useless against such monstrosities. "Hold your fire," he whispered sharply. The dragon's glow intensified, casting long shadows across the cavern, and for a moment, silence ruled. Then a sound broke it, the hiss of ancient gears grinding, the low thrum of engines turning after 1,000 years of silence. One of the war beasts twitched. Its clawed hand curled slowly, scraping against the stone floor, sparks flying. Its eyes lit with burning crimson, piercing the dark like twin suns. Panic rippled through the humans. "They're waking," someone shouted, but Hayes raised his arm to keep them steady, though fear churned in his gut. He looked at the baby dragon, its light flaring wildly as though it fought against something unseen. The realization struck him like a hammer, the dragon wasn't just reacting. It was connected. These things were answering to it, to its very existence. And maybe that was why it had been buried. Not to kill it, but to keep it from being found. Because the dragon wasn't only a guardian. It was a key. The cavern trembled violently as more of the beasts stirred, their engines coughing to life in a chorus of mechanical growls. The heat rose, washing over the humans in suffocating waves. Hayes ordered his team to move, dragging them toward a ledge on the far side of the cavern where stone bridges stretched deeper underground. The baby dragon darted ahead, as if guided by instinct, its glow lighting their path. Behind them, the first war beast lifted its massive head, releasing a metallic roar that rattled the cavern walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. Hayes risked one last glance over his shoulder, his breath catching at the sight. The chamber that had seemed like a tomb now pulsed with life, dozens of monstrous forms shifting in their slumber, some lifting wings of fire-forged metal, others dragging claws that cut through stone like butter. The air reeked of burning oil and something far older, a stench of ancient death that clung to the machines like a memory. The dragon's glow wavered, as if drained by the sheer weight of what surrounded it. Hayes grabbed it again, holding it close despite the heat rolling off its scales. "We're not leaving you," he muttered, half to it, half to himself. Above them, the crack they had fallen through began to collapse, sealing off the world of light. The humans were trapped in the underworld of giants, and every second the beasts stirred closer to waking. Hayes's mind raced, but there was no plan, no weapon, no strategy that could stop what had begun. The only thing that gave him the strength to move was the small, trembling creature in his arms. Whatever these machines were, whatever they had been built to do, the baby dragon mattered. Maybe it was the only thing that could stop them. Or maybe it was the reason they would rise. Either way, there was no turning back now. The cavern stretched endlessly, its walls alive with glowing veins of fire that pulsed like the heartbeat of some buried god. The air grew hotter the deeper they went, and the silence between the tremors carried a weight that pressed against the chest of every human who walked there. Their boots clanged against stone bridges suspended over bottomless pits, each echo bouncing back 100-fold, as though unseen voices mocked their passage. The baby dragon led the way, its tiny claws clicking against the rock, its glow brightening whenever they neared another set of alien carvings etched into the stone. It was as though the walls themselves were teaching it, whispering memories older than humanity's first fire. Hayes and his soldiers followed, rifles raised but useless, their faces pale and streaked with dust. None of them spoke. Words felt too small in this place. At last the bridges ended at a platform carved into a colossal wall. Upon it were more carvings, larger and clearer than before. Strange shapes, like a language of fire, ran across the surface, and in the center stood a relief of creatures that looked like the dragon, but not small and trembling like theirs. These were titanic, their wings spread wide, their bodies shining with light, their faces proud and fierce. They stood over the same metal war beasts that now stirred below, locking them in chains of fire. Hayes stepped closer, brushing dust from the carvings with his glove, and felt the stone pulse under his touch. This was no simple artwork. It was a record. A soldier gasped as the carvings shifted, light flowing through them like liquid. Images moved, coming alive on the wall. They told a story without words, one so ancient it made the ruins above seem young. Hayes watched as the images showed a people, long vanished, who had once ruled this world. Brilliant builders, they created machines too vast and too hungry, beasts designed to devour entire planets for fuel. The machines obeyed until they did not. They turned on their masters, consuming their cities, spreading like wildfire across the stars. In desperation, the builders turned to their final creation, living guardians born of fire and sky. Dragons, woven from both flesh and starlight, created to fight what machines could not. The wall shifted again, and Hayes saw the war, the guardians against the war beasts. Fire against steel. Light against shadow. The dragons were mighty, their flames scorching entire armies of machines, but the cost was terrible. One by one, the guardians fell, their bodies burning into dust that lit the sky like dying stars. In the end, only a handful remained, barely enough to lock the beasts away in the world's core, burying them beneath stone and sealing them with their own life force. Hayes's breath caught as the last image showed a single egg, glowing faintly, hidden beneath the ruins of the fallen city. Their dragon. The last guardian, born not to destroy but to ensure the prison remained unbroken. The wall dimmed, the story complete, but the silence it left behind was heavier than before. The soldiers shifted uneasily, their fear mingled now with awe. One finally spoke, voice shaking. "We brought it out. We woke all this up. Hayes clenched his jaw. He knew it was true. In saving the creature, they had undone the chains that held the machines asleep. The baby dragon looked back at them, eyes wide and glowing, as if it understood every word written on the walls and every fear running through their minds. It gave a soft whine, pressing against Hayes's chest, its body trembling. For the first time, Hayes realized the creature was just as afraid as they were. A sudden roar shattered the quiet, echoing from the depths behind them. The soldiers spun, weapons raised, as the sound of gears and claws grinding against stone thundered closer. One of the beasts below had fully awakened. The cavern shook, dust raining from above, and a red glow spread across the far side of the chamber like sunrise made of fire. Hayes knew they had only moments before the monster reached them. He barked orders, rallying his team, pushing them along another path carved into the rock. They ran, boots pounding, breaths ragged, the glow of the dragon lighting their way through twisting tunnels. As they fled, the walls trembled again, and more images flickered faintly to life. Hayes caught glimpses of battles fought across different worlds, of dragons soaring into skies lit by burning cities, of machines swallowing entire oceans to power themselves. It was not just this planet at risk. These war beasts were a plague, a weapon designed to consume without end. If they fully woke, they would not stop here. The galaxy itself would feel their hunger. The thought chilled Hayes to the bone, but it also steeled him. Humanity had been drawn into something far greater than a ruined city and a lost creature. They were standing in the path of an ancient war reborn. The tunnel opened at last into another chamber, smaller but filled with a different kind of light. Here, fire did not burn red but gold, softer, almost warm. In the center lay the remains of a dragon far larger than the baby, its skeleton fused with crystal, wings folded like a guardian at rest. The baby dragon cried out, rushing forward, pressing against the bones. For a moment, the golden light surged, flowing into the small creature, its body glowing brighter than ever before. Hayes and his team could only watch as the energy passed into it, filling it with strength and sorrow alike. The chamber quaked again, this time from the pounding steps of something monstrous drawing near. Hayes realized then that their fight was no longer about survival alone. The dragon in his care was not just a child, it was an heir, carrying the weight of an entire race's sacrifice. Its small body shook with power it barely understood, but its eyes burned now with something new, determination. Hayes tightened his grip on his rifle, though he knew it would not matter against what came. Still, he squared his shoulders and looked at his team. "We hold the line," he said. "For it. For all of us." The roar came again, closer, deafening. The heat swelled until the stone itself seemed to melt. The first war beast stepped into view, its body a mountain of blackened steel and living fire, its eyes blazing like dying stars. It lowered its head, jaws opening with a sound like an entire world cracking in half. The soldiers stood ready, the dragon pressed against Hayes's chest, its glow rising to meet the monster's fire. In that moment, there was no turning back. The ancient war had awakened, and humanity was no longer just a witness. They were part of it now. The cavern shook as though the mountain itself wanted to throw them out, the roar of the awakened war beast echoing like a storm trapped underground. Hayes steadied himself against the trembling wall, his rifle clutched tight though he knew it was nothing but a toy against the monster that now stalked toward them. The soldiers stood in a tight circle, sweat streaking their dust-covered faces, eyes darting between their commander and the tiny glowing dragon that pressed against his chest. The baby's glow pulsed faster and brighter with every step of the advancing creature, as if its heart beat in rhythm with the giant that hunted them. The cavern filled with smoke and sparks as the war beast pushed through an arch of stone too small for its massive body, the rock splitting apart in thunderous cracks. Its form was part machine, part living fire, a hulking titan of blackened metal with rivers of molten light pulsing through its chest. Its legs tore furrows into the ground, each claw bigger than the soldiers themselves, and when it opened its mouth the heat that poured out seared the air like a furnace. Hayes barked orders through the rising panic. "Spread out, draw its eyes, keep it away from the dragon." The men obeyed, sprinting across the chamber, unleashing bursts of rifle fire that sparked uselessly against the monster's armored hide. The beast did not even flinch. Its burning eyes locked only on the glow in Hayes's arms, the last guardian, the unfinished heir. With a mechanical screech, it lunged, its massive claw slamming down where Hayes had stood a second earlier. Stone shattered, shards flying like knives. Hayes rolled, clutching the baby dragon tighter, his ribs aching as he scrambled to his feet. The tiny creature cried out, its glow flashing into a sudden burst of light that forced the monster to recoil for just a breath. That breath saved them. A soldier on the far side hurled an explosive charge, the blast rocking the chamber and staggering the beast just enough for the team to regroup near Hayes. Their weapons could not harm it, but their courage bought them seconds that mattered. Hayes looked at the baby dragon, whose trembling body now radiated not only fear but also an energy too big for something so small. Its eyes glowed gold, brighter than before, and Hayes realized with a start that it was no longer just reacting. It was preparing. The chamber itself seemed to respond, golden veins in the rock flickering to life, carrying light toward the place where the skeletal remains of the great dragon rested. The baby pressed against the bones again, its glow merging with the golden fire, and Hayes felt heat surge like a heartbeat through the ground beneath him. The war beast roared and advanced again, tearing through the rubble as though it were nothing. But before it could strike, the air shook with a new sound, a cry not of fear but of defiance. The baby dragon opened its mouth, and though no flame came, a pulse of golden light exploded outward, slamming into the beast's chest. The creature staggered back, its molten veins flickering as if the light burned deeper than any weapon had. The soldiers froze, eyes wide, as they realized the small guardian was awakening its true strength. Yet the blast drained it. The baby sagged in Hayes's arms, exhausted, its glow dimming though its spirit remained fierce. Hayes looked at the towering monster, at his tired team, at the fragile guardian now bound to humanity's fate, and he knew they had to move. "Retreat," he shouted. "We can't win here." The team fell back through a side tunnel, the beast's enraged screech chasing them. The ground split, fire pouring through cracks as the ancient prison began to collapse under the strain of awakening power. They sprinted, half carrying, half dragging each other through twisting passages, the dragon's faint glow their only light. Behind them, the war beast clawed through stone, relentless, a storm of fire and steel determined to reclaim its freedom. At last they burst into another chamber, this one vast but unlike the others. It was not carved with symbols or filled with bones. Instead, it was a chamber of machinery, towering pylons and glowing conduits left behind by the builders who had created both the beasts and their guardians. Ancient control panels hummed faintly, their lights long dormant but now flickering awake in the presence of the dragon. Hayes stumbled forward, placing the baby against the glowing console, and at once the room roared to life. Energy surged through the conduits, the air vibrating with the hum of power not felt for centuries. Holographic displays burst into view, alien symbols twisting into images. They showed maps of the planet, its molten core, the prison that barely held the other beasts asleep. The soldiers stared in awe and terror as the maps revealed more than they wished to see. The monster behind them was not alone. Dozens, maybe hundreds of war beasts slumbered in the depths, their bodies like buried stars waiting to ignite. And worse, their prison was failing. Hayes clenched his fists, his voice rough as he forced the truth into words. If one rises, the rest will follow. This planet won't hold them. They'll spread. His voice cracked, the enormity of it pressing down like a weight. They'll consume everything. The baby dragon, though weak, pressed its small body against the console, its eyes fierce. Images shifted again, showing not only destruction but also hope. The guardians, those who had fought before, had left behind not only a prison but a weapon. The golden energy that had passed into the baby was a seed, meant to grow, meant to awaken something greater when the time came. Humanity had found it by accident, but perhaps it was no accident at all. The baby looked at Hayes, and in that gaze he felt more than instinct. He felt trust. The last guardian was choosing them, binding its fate to his people, as fragile and unready as they were. The roar of the approaching beast shook the chamber, a reminder that their choice was not about tomorrow but about now. Hayes raised his weapon, though he knew it was pointless, and looked at his men. "This isn't just about us anymore," he said. "This is about everyone. If these things break free, the galaxy burns. But we're not alone. Not anymore." The soldiers nodded, fear still in their eyes but something stronger beneath it. They stood taller, their circle tightening around Hayes and the dragon. The war beast smashed into the chamber, fire spilling like rivers, its molten chest glaring as though it carried the heart of a sun. Hayes met its gaze, his voice steady even as the cavern shook. "You want it." He lifted the dragon higher, its glow rising in answer. "You'll have to go through all of us." The monster roared, and the golden light flared, filling the chamber like dawn breaking underground. Humanity's stand had begun. The golden light surged through the chamber like a living wave, clashing with the firestorm of the war beast in a blaze that blinded the soldiers and rattled the stone around them. Hayes stood his ground, the baby dragon in his arms shining brighter than ever before, its small body trembling but refusing to turn away. The soldiers raised their rifles, knowing the weapons were useless yet unwilling to back down, for there was no retreat left. The beast's molten chest pulsed as though it contained a sun desperate to burst free, its roar shaking dust and shards loose from the ceiling. Yet in the middle of all that fury, the baby dragon lifted its head and released a cry that was not childish anymore. It was a sound filled with both pain and defiance, a sound that echoed like the memory of its ancient kin. The air changed. The golden veins across the walls, the conduits of alien machines, the very bones of the earth began to vibrate with the cry. The chamber's dormant power came alive, responding not to human hands but to the will of the guardian that had been born to command it. The floor cracked open, releasing arcs of golden fire that wove upward like threads, forming a shield around Hayes and his men. The war beast lunged, claws slamming into the barrier, sparks exploding with each strike, but the shield held. For the first time, the monster recoiled in hesitation, its fire dimming as though it recognized the energy that could undo it. Hayes turned, his eyes meeting those of his men. They were exhausted, battered, wounded, but in their faces burned something more powerful than fear. Resolve. They would fight, even if it meant never leaving this cavern alive. Hayes whispered to the dragon, his voice rough yet steady. "It's your choice now, little one. Show us what you are meant to be." The baby's golden eyes glowed, and suddenly the holograms around them shifted again, revealing images not just of war but of hope. They showed guardians of old, massive dragons clad in light, standing beside human-like figures who wielded their fire as one. They were partners, bonded not by blood but by trust. Hayes understood then. This was never meant to be humanity's fight alone. It was always meant to be together. The war beast roared, as if to drown out the memory of that truth. It slammed its claws again, shattering parts of the golden barrier, forcing the soldiers back into formation. Heat washed over them, flames searing the ground as the shield cracked. Hayes knew they could not hold forever. With a desperate cry, he lifted the baby dragon higher, and the creature pressed its tiny chest against the console. Golden light exploded outward, brighter than the sun, searing into the war beast's molten body. The monster shrieked in fury as the light ripped through it, tearing the fire from its veins, unraveling its unnatural fusion of flesh and machine. But it was not only the monster that trembled. The entire cavern shook, as though the prison itself was cracking under the strain. The holograms flickered, showing the other beasts stirring in their slumber, their prisons weakening. Hayes realized the terrible truth: their victory here might mean the awakening of them all. Yet in the same breath, the images revealed another path. The dragon's light was not simply a weapon. It was a signal, a beacon. It could call out, not just to machines, not just to the ancient network of guardians, but across the stars. The baby dragon cried once more, and the golden light streamed upward through the cracks in the stone, bursting through the mountain and into the night sky above. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy would see the fire of the guardians again. Somewhere far away, someone or something would answer. Hayes felt a shiver run down his spine, knowing that their fight had just been broadcast across space. Humanity was no longer alone in the dark. Allies or enemies would come, but at least the silence was broken. The war beast collapsed with a final scream, its molten chest cooling into lifeless stone, its fire extinguished by the dragon's power. The soldiers stared in disbelief, their breaths ragged, their bodies trembling from exhaustion. They had stood against something no weapon of man could defeat, and somehow they had lived. Yet Hayes knew this was not the end. The ground still rumbled, the prison still cracked, and deep beneath them countless more monsters stirred. The dragon nestled weakly against him, its glow dim but steady, its eyes still locked on his as if to say the fight was far from over. Hayes looked around at his men, at the chamber alive with golden fire, at the dead husk of the beast that had hunted them. He raised his voice, not just for them but for whatever unseen watchers might already be listening beyond the stars. "We are here," he said. "We are human. We stand with the Guardian. If the darkness rises, we will rise with it." His words echoed through the chamber, carried by the golden light, carried perhaps much farther than he could ever know. The soldiers rallied around him, their voices lifting in agreement, their fear transforming into something stronger. They were no longer survivors clinging to life in a collapsing cavern. They were the first defenders of something greater. And as the golden beacon shot higher into the sky, piercing the clouds and painting the stars with its fire, the future shifted. Somewhere, far beyond their world, forces would see. Some would fear. Some would hope. And some would come. Hayes looked once more at the dragon, its small body resting against his chest, and whispered, "We'll protect you. Together we'll face whatever comes." The baby blinked slowly, and for a moment Hayes could almost hear a voice in his mind, not words, but a feeling, agreement. The last guardian had chosen. Humanity had answered. And in that choice, the fate of the galaxy had begun to change. The rumbling quieted, the chamber steadied, and though danger still lurked in the deep, though more beasts would one day rise, Hayes and his team walked out of the cavern with their heads high. They were not the same men who had entered. They carried with them not just the fragile glow of a dragon, but the weight of destiny. The night sky above shimmered with the beacon's golden trail, and for the first time in centuries, hope returned to the stars.